What do the artists of the top 10 most expensive paintings in history have in common? That's right, they're all men. In fact, when you look at the amount of current artists represented by galleries in Europe and North America, it's only just 1 in 10 that are female.
It can often be a bit dispiriting when you're pulling out rack and screen after screen. It's just a sea of male faces looking back at you, white, a certain class.
Now, given that 63% of undergraduates are women and 66% of postgraduates in creative arts and design are women, this seems really outdated and wrong. Why then are so few female artists represented in the world of art? And are these figures finally starting to shift? Like so much inequality in our society, the male skew in the art world has a long history.
For so long, male art has been put on a pedestal.
The systems in place institutionally have really colluded against the women being able to follow those artistic training and pathways.
Whether it's kind of childcare commitments or whether that's access to education.
Take art education. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, women were barred from studying the nude model, which really formed the basis of any academic training.
Drawing the male nude was not seen to be a womanly, ladylike thing to do.
Although the RA had 2 female founders, the Academy only allowed female life drawing classes in 1883, after various petitions. And even then were told, models should be partially draped and clothed with a pair of bathing drawers and a loincloth. This was hugely prohibitive, particularly given how dominated art at the time was by pieces depicting the human form. Specific, prestigious institutions didn't let women study at all. London's Royal Academy of Art only opened its doors to women in 1860, when one Laura Herford was accidentally admitted after submitting work under her initials, LH. This exclusion of women from education meant that they were often excluded from entire art movements. Take the Bauhaus. Though women were allowed to study, and its founder claimed there was no difference between the beautiful and the strong sex.
Women were accepted into the Bauhaus, but they were pushed towards so-called craft.
Women were pigeonholed in this way throughout history. These crafts were more seen as decorative than art, but in recent years, they've been gaining recognition as important artworks in their own right.
Think about embroideries and tapestries. I mean, they're exquisite when you get up close to them.
Phoebe Anna Jacquer, for example, if you look at her embroidery work, which are on a scale of a large painting, you can really appreciate the skill, not as an embroiderer, but as an artist.
Historical crafts were more than just technical and decorative, often raising challenging or emotional subjects. This specimen table by Jane and Mary Parmenter, based on their experience travelling around Europe on what was known as a grand tour, is an intricate arrangement of shells and micro-mosaics around a central plaque, a response to the death of their sister, stating, "Life shall triumph over death." When women were able to work in more traditionally artistic mediums, there were issues with the legacy and longevity of the work.
There's a sort of historical effacement of their work, so what they were producing wasn't considered worthy of keeping and looking after and kind of having that legacy. So it doesn't survive in the art collections because over generations people have thought that it didn't have that value.
This all has a huge knock-on effect on which historical works by female artists galleries can acquire and display today.
It's not just us choosing, and it's not just us buying. There aren't a lot of works out there, particularly works you can show permanently, and the ones that are coming up on the market, everybody's going for them, so the competition is huge.
So we don't have a large budget for acquiring material, so if we're trying to fill in those historical gaps, we're kind of being priced out of the market a little bit.
Related to all this is the treatment of female artists as individuals.
Women have often been a kind of footnote, seen as the muse, the partner of, the lover of. Their own integrity and their own abilities have been therefore underplayed or neglected completely.
Leonora Carrington was commonly referred to as being Max Ernst's muse. But she has called this claim bull, saying,
She didn't have time to be a muse.
I was too busy rebelling against my family and learning to be an artist.
But she is being seen as now. She has an incredible collection all over the world.
Jumping forward to the present day, the contemporary art world continues to be influenced by historic inequality.
Name recognition becomes a kind of tool that people are using to make decisions.
And it's those big names, those kind of well-established art historical figures who bring the punters in.
But of course, if women have not had visibility, they are less recognised by virtue of that. I suppose it's a kind of cycle.
As Frances Morris of the Tate Modern says, we really have to stop celebrating creativity depending on how it's monetised by the art market, as it so inhibits progress in representation. To give you a sense of how gender-skewed art markets are, of $106 billion spent on art at auctions in the last decade, work made by women made up only $4 billion, or 2%. And of those 2%, half of all sales of female art were pieces by just 5 artists. So, new decade. We have to ask, are things finally changing?
Oh, that's content.
I would say it's slow.
And you feel like you're getting somewhere, and then you realise that your 8-year-old daughter's confronted with things that you were confronted with when you were 8, and you just think, oh, come on.
There are positive steps being made.
All around the world, more and more women artists are being collected.
The more contemporary art, there is definitely a move to collecting more female artists.
The art world is starting to see more women in more senior positions.
We've got, really important role models within the sector who are making, great change.
A growing female population of staff who are talking about it a lot.
There's also a broader cultural shift towards equality in representation and opportunity, which is putting pressure on galleries and the art makers to focus more on female artists.
Attitudes are changing.
It is the question everybody asks, where are the female artists?
There's definitely a sea change in society.
Post-Me Too movement, I think that had a massive impact because we just had enough of not talking about it.
But of course, there is still a long way to go. Although we can, to an extent, rewrite historical art in terms of making the women who were making art visible, we can't change the historic gender imbalance.
It's a shame that it's now hindsight that we're recognising these artists.
It's difficult because ultimately you can't show what you don't have, but it means that you have to do a lot with what you do have, so you have to make sure that you're thinking about how you're presenting work.
It does mean there are kind of gaps in the historical record, which we're constantly trying to kind of research and fill in, but it's a difficult task sometimes.
But there is hope that the decisions we make now about what we collect, which artists we give opportunities to, we can and will change the landscape for future generations.
I am optimistic about change because I think that there's a collective understanding, not just within the art sector, but I think within the world at large.
In terms of both acquisition and programming, that these artists and those forms of art are getting a higher and higher profile. I think that's really positive.
Let us know who your favourite female artists are in the comments below, and check out our channel for more videos in the series.